Gaur Premanande.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, dear devotees, thank you very much for coming. First and foremost, we would like to express our deep, deep, deep gratitude to His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhu. Let us loudly welcome him by chanting Hari Bol 3 times. Hari Bol! Hari Bol! Hari Bol! It is our great good fortune. Sadhus like him needs no introduction, but it gives me an opportunity to glorify and make spiritual progress just by saying few words about him. So I would like to mention few things for the benefit of everyone. So His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhu is a disciple of His Holiness Radhanath Swami Maharaj, a monk and a spiritual author. He has actually done his electronics and telecommunication engineering from the Government College of Pune. So he is also of our Biradri from the Silicon Valley people, that way also. He subsequently served as a software engineer in a prominent multinational software corporation. But seeing the prevalent problems of stress, depression, addiction, and overall misdirection, all caused by a lack of spirituality, he felt inspired to dedicate his life to the cause of sharing the spiritual wisdom of Bhagavad Gita under the aegis of ISKCON. He is now a member of ISKCON's leading intellectual body, the Shastric Advisory Council, and is the associate editor of ISKCON's global magazine, Back to Godhead. He is the author of world's only Gita daily feature, wherein he writes daily a 300 words inspirational reflection on a verse from Bhagavad Gita. He has written over 1700 Gita meditations that are posted daily on gitadaily.com and are read through daily feeds by thousands from all over the world. He also answers questions by seekers on his site, thespiritualscientist.com, where is over 3,500 audio answers and several hundred articles are available. He travels all over the world from Australia to America, giving talks on spiritual subjects in temples, university, and companies. His articles have been published in Indian Express, Economic Times, Times of India, Speaking Tree, etc. And his writings have been translated into many foreign languages, including German, Chinese, Romanian, and several Indian languages like Kannada, Telugu, Bengali, Hindi, Marathi. He is actually the author of 16 books, and we are fortunate to have some of those books here. We can get a chance to actually get some of these books later after the lecture. And without further delay, once again, we are blessed to have all of you. And of course, His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhu. So thank you very much, Chaitanya Charan Prabhu, for blessing us with your personal association. Hari Bol. Dear devotees, a little bit of a logistic questions. If those who need the sofa, if the devotees, can we please sit here right now? Mummy. Actually, if you can, okay. Because we may need a lot of space later on, so if you can.
Vijnana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. My dear Lord, please help us all to understand your words and understand your love for us as is seen through your words and is seen in this world. Hare Krishna. Am I audible to all of you? No. There's some kind of a echo coming. When I speak through different sound systems, it's interesting to discover how many voices I have. So, while things are settled, is it better now? No, it's the same. Hare Krishna. Okay, I'll speak a little loudly. Do all of you have one copy of this book somewhere nearby? Yes. So, I'll read something from this book. So this is latest book, The Prayers Inspired by Bhagavad Gita. As some of you may know that I write every day on the Bhagavad Gita. Okay. Sorry, I'll settle down. I write every day on the Bhagavad Gita, and I have been trying to approach the Bhagavad Gita in different ways, to try to understand it better, try to connect with it better. So one of the ways is, no, I think my screen has gone off. So, I'll start it in a few minutes. So one of the ways I found that Kulashekar Maharaj approaches the Bhagavad Gita is through prayers. He takes a verse from the Gita or makes his own prayer out of it. So today we'll discuss one such verse from the Bhagavad Gita, and the topic I'll be discussing is the nature of nature, the nature of the world, the nature of our own nature, the nature of God. And broadly I'll be discussing this from the point of view of the problem of pain. Now, distress, suffering, adversity, these happen to everyone. And there's I was talking with one boy who was born and grew up in a devotee family. He told me, I don't like to go to the temple nowadays. I said, why? So he said, whenever I go to the temple, no matter how many problems I have, no matter how troubled by it I am, Krishna is always smiling. So, as a traveling speaker, you travel and sometimes you feel all the issues that people have, you know about them, but once in a while, hey, that's a new one. So, I am in so much trouble and so much distress, and Krishna just seems to be smiling. Does Krishna even care for me? So, I gave him an answer, but then when I was pondering on the Bhagavad Gita, when I wrote this particular prayer, this is page 36 in the book, where Krishna is speaking to Arjuna and Krishna is smiling at that time. So, this book has a one-line summary prayer, then a Bhagavad Gita verse, then an English translation in poetry of that verse, and then a prayer inspired by the verse. So, let your smiling amid my suffering strengthen my faith, not weaken it. Okay. So, let's recite the verse. Tamuvacha Rishikesha Prahasanniva Bharata Senayorubhayormadhye Vishidantam idam vachaha. The Lord of the senses spoke with a gentle grace, a knowing smile playing upon his divine face. Between the armies standing calm and bright, he solaced Arjuna who was lamenting his plight. So I'd request you to, different devotees, may one Prabhu, one Mataji, to read one paragraph. Do we have a second mic by any chance? Okay, where is it? Okay, here it is. It's here. So, who would like to read?
O my Lord, many are the times when I feel lost and lonely, confronted with the perplexities of life. At those times when nothing I do seems to be working, I cannot help but wonder, do you, O Lord, know my plight?
So for us, sometimes when we are facing life challenges, it is natural to feel when we are going through life and its challenges. It's funny. Sorry about this. Just give me a minute. Are you recording it from there? Are you recording the session from there?
Yes, it's going to YouTube.
Okay, so if it doesn't work, then I'll have a backup. You know, nowadays in India, or actually everywhere, people are becoming a little more interested in Indian culture, Indian wisdom. So, one devotee boy, he showed me recently. I thought it was a cartoon, but it was serious. One American boy was asking his Indian friend in an American school, why do you people worship so many gods? And this Indian boy is thinking, he gets an idea. He says, oh, we like to keep backups. So we will look at here, when we are going through life, we all face different kinds of problems in life. And broadly speaking, the problems that we face, they can fall in multiple categories. Now, there are different ways of categorizing suffering, and you can say none of them are completely watertight. But you could say that if we are going through life, there is suffering that can come from nature. It can be too hot, it can be too cold, it can be, there can be a tornado, there can be suffering which can come from nature. There is suffering that can come from people. And there is suffering that can come from ourselves. That means by our own actions. So, where is this suffering coming from? Okay, this way? Downwards. Okay. Thank you. So now these three sufferings can broadly be, in the Sanskrit tradition, they can be broadly called as Adi Daivik, Adi Bhautik, and Adhyatmik. So we could say that these are all different kinds of sufferings. Now, when the suffering comes in our life, at one level, we human beings just need to make sense of why this is happening and what can I do about it. So if we look at these sufferings, now when I was giving this talk, one boy, he raised his hand and he said, if my computer crashes, which kind of suffering is it? So what do you think among these three? Yeah? Okay, nature. Did nature make the computer? Yeah. Nice. Yeah, I agree with you. So it's sometimes with respect to specific sufferings, it's difficult to say. Maybe we have mishandled the computer and that's why it got spoiled. Sometimes it could be that we just got a bad model. Sometimes maybe we give the computer to someone and they use it for some time, and then sometimes they give the computer back. Is this really my computer? It's so maybe made so it becomes scratches and all those kind of things can happen. So broadly speaking, the point is not so much necessary to categorize suffering, but it's to understand broadly. It's helpful sometimes to categorize, like if you consider the pandemic. Now where would you categorize that? Adi Bhautik, okay. Lab leak theory? Yeah, so where the pandemic came from, initially we thought it was just natural, just a mutation. Maybe it is, what is the term for it? You try to gain of function. Research that leads to the microbes' functions being enhanced artificially in a lab. And then after that leads to, it could be. So the point is that sometimes it may be difficult for us to specifically analyze where the suffering is coming from. So more than analyzing where the suffering is coming from, it's just to understand the context of suffering. So we could say that suffering can come from the self, suffering can come from others, suffering can come from nature. So all of these three could be sources of suffering. Now, if we see among these three kinds of sufferings, let's look at the Mahabharata. We'll come to, in the Mahabharata we have Krishna here speaking to Arjuna. So, if we consider the Pandavas' lives, Arjuna's life, but Pandavas' life, which was the first major suffering they had to face? Yes. Now, if their father's death, what would we call that? Well, it's difficult. Okay? Well, you could call it natural. He was cursed, and then he had a weak movement. But broadly, you could say primarily the curse. You could call it. Now, what was the next big suffering they had? Yes. So there was poisoning of Bhima. Now, where was that coming from? Adi Bhautik. So you could say that is from others, that is social suffering. Now, if we move forward, again, the burning of the house of fire, that will be Lakshagraha. So the arson, we could call it, that could also call it social. Now, what is the next major thing that happened? Yeah. Now, if you consider the gambling match, where would you put that? Social and self. So it's difficult. So you could say that Yudhishthir himself gambled and he lost everything. So it's self. But then you could also call it social in the sense that it was that he was pressured or he was manipulated. He was goaded into fighting. So the thing is that when we look at suffering in our life, we try to analyze some cause for it. And each one of us, depending on our particular nature, we will gravitate toward a particular cause. Some people, they just like to blame others. I may say everybody likes to blame. That's natural. When something bad happens, we want. It's like the human mind seems to be designed more to look for a villain than to look for a hero. It's like my life story is going wrong and there must be some villain responsible for this. So now, it could go both ways. Broadly speaking, depending on now nature, we can't really personify it. You can't scream at the rains. Maybe they're a god of the rains. So sometimes, even in this idea of God is nowadays used almost non-literally also. Like say, if some India is losing a match, and we don't want to lose, we pray to the gods of rain, may it rain now, so that India doesn't lose the match. Something like that. So we may pray. So we need some, in one sense, some cause to point the finger to. Now generally, there's some people who point the finger towards nature, but that's rare. So generally, whenever we are having suffering, whenever we are having some kind of pain, now depending on where we point suffering to, we will develop particular frames of mind. So, what are the frames of mind? If we blame nature, some people say, yes, life's like that, This world is a terrible place. Maybe not use the word dukhalaya, and we may use the word dukhalaya, but it's like sometimes some people say life sucks, or something like that. People use that, life is like that. Not the most polite language, but that sometimes people just say this is how it is, So now, that is, some people may just go in that direction. And now say if some guest comes to our home, and that guest says, I'm feeling very cold in this room. And you say, what can you do? This world is dukhalaya. This world is a place of distress. That guest will say, I don't know about the world, but your home is a place of distress. So, there are some places where the ascription of a particular cause, like assigning a particular cause, seems to be obviously absurd, isn't it? No, you can, if it's cold, we can give you some warm clothes, we can put a heater over here, we can give more blankets, we can do something about it. But what happens? Some people, based on the way they have experienced life, more than experienced life, the way they have processed their experience of life, they tend to go towards particular causes for problems. So, if we consider people to be the cause of problems, then what happens is, this is where some people we may blame different people. Some people may, the way I was brought up, my parents or my grandparents or whatever, maybe my parents always compared me unfavorably with a sibling, and that's damaged me. Nowadays, psychology does this a lot. And if you have any problems, do psychotherapy and analyze what happened in your childhood, and that caused problems. And there's some truth to it, but some of us, we may tend to blame, find some people to blame. Now, it may also be that sometimes we may find a particular group of people to blame. This is where every philosophy, there's a big difference between philosophy and ideology. So now, the word ideology sometimes just has a negative connotation, but practically speaking, philosophy centers on understanding, trying to make sense of life. One simple definition of philosophy is the tool we turn to when we try to make sense of things that don't make sense. When we try to make sense of things that don't make sense. That's where we turn towards philosophy. Now, ideology is not so much for understanding, it is for imposing. It is imposing a particular vision on the world. This is the cause of the problem and this is the solution. So, for example, in Europe there was the Nazi ideology, which said the problem of the world is the Jews. And if the Jews were removed, then we Germans, they can't call themselves Aryans, we will flourish. And that's how people can start having biases and prejudices and against hatred against particular communities. That sometimes people may just blame a particular group of people. Whether it's this blame can be based on region, it can be based on nation, it can be based on religion, it can be based on color, it can even be based on profession. So whatever it is. So we tend to blame certain individuals in our life, or we may grow up to blame certain communities, certain parts of the world, or certain people in the world. So now when we see this, somebody else doing it, it is relatively easy to spot this. You're just finding some way to put the blame on someone. And now, can people cause us suffering? Yes, of course. But is that the cause? So what I'm talking about here is the psychological tendency for us to gravitate towards certain explanations. So this, when we blame nature, the result of each of these, they lead to certain psychological tendencies. When we become very bitter about life itself, very bitter, very resentful, very hateful. There's one atheistic philosopher, he said that life is suffering, and the more you try to mitigate suffering, the worse the suffering actually becomes. Now I said, this is Bhagavatam philosophy. Well, no. The conclusion was, therefore the only philosophical question worth asking is whether to commit suicide today or tomorrow. What is the point of living at all? So it can make us very bitter. Now when we blame some people, what happens is, it makes us hateful. Now there is a difference between anger and hate. What is the difference? Yeah. Yes, you would like to answer? Yeah.
Anger is like I'm mad at you. You're angry at them and you're mad at them and you have some bad feelings towards them. And hateful is when you try to actually do some action about it.
Okay, so anger is when you have bad feeling. Hate is when you try to do something about it. That's a good observation. Thank you. Well said. Anyone else, you want to add something?
I think anger is maybe temporary and hate prolongs probably. It's a bit
Yes.
state of mind.
Anger is short-lived. Hate is prolonged. The simple difference is anger is hot. Hate is cold. Now what does that mean? When somebody becomes angry, they become hot. They become hot-headed. You can see their face becoming red, eyes becoming red. But so generally when a person becomes angry, it's very difficult for them to conceal that. But if somebody has hate, it's cold, it's calculative. A person who hates may actually come and pretend to be our best friend. And they will just get us to become our best friend, and then in the moment when we are vulnerable, they will stab us. So maybe we think this person is my best friend and we reveal some secret. And the next day, the secret will be on social media everywhere. This person is like this. So basically, when we gravitate towards somebody to blame, then we become hateful. Now the third is when we blame ourselves. When we blame ourselves, every time, see, we all need to find a cause. We need some way to make sense of what's wrong. So when we blame ourselves, we habitually try to put the blame on ourselves. Then the result of that is, what do you think is the result? Yes, low self-esteem. We become insecure. We become insecure. We become depressed. We become hopeless. So basically, if we are constantly blaming ourselves for problems, that's not a healthy thing. Sometimes there are just problems that happen. There's nothing we can do about it. And sometimes these kind of tendencies come in childhood itself. Say, suppose now it happens that, say, a couple decides to separate for whatever reason, and if they have kids, then quite often the kids think that maybe I did something because of which one parent went away. Now it has nothing to do with the kid. But what happens is, that is a very vulnerable phase. And at that time, if the kid starts internalizing that, it can grow. It can become a very severe wound for that person. And basically, everybody will face challenges in life. But how we make sense of those challenges, that is the key thing. So, we all will face loss in life. Loss can be of any kind. Now, how do we interpret this loss? I may say, I have lost. Maybe somebody had a job and they lost the job. It's interesting how people's psychology also comes out. I haven't met a single American till now, not that I have met many, all Americans obviously not, who says, I am jobless. They say, I am between jobs. Have you noticed this? I am between jobs. The idea, now we could say there is a bit of positivity within that, but along with the positivity, there is also a certain level of nonchalance about it. Like, one job is gone, I'll get another job. Just between jobs right now. So, they don't take it very seriously. Now, probably many of us, most of us here are from India, so, in at least India had many years, 200, 300 days of a lot of economic hardship. It's a hugely competitive place. And there, if you get a job, it's a big thing. And to lose a job is also a terrible thing. Now, when we lose a job, I say, I have lost. That's one way of interpreting it. Now, another way of interpreting it could be, I am lost. I don't know what to do. Suppose somebody had spent their whole life, okay, I want to become a teacher. And they want to become a teacher and suddenly the teaching jobs get cut down or whatever. Somebody dreams, I want to become an artist. Now with AI, so much of art is just becoming automated. It doesn't have the human element to it, but still, most people who are not really very refined, they don't notice the difference. Say, what am I going to do? I am lost. So that is a little more disorienting. But the most damaging would be, I am a loser. Now, if somebody starts thinking, I am a loser, then what happens is, it's not just that particular issue that is the problem. That particular issue that is the problem. That particular issue, immediately our mind connects with all the issues that we may have had. And all of this, I did like this over there, I did like this over there, I did like this over there. And it's just so terrible. I am a loser. So, it's very important that one of the essential life skills that we need to learn, and we need to help our children to learn, is to process suffering in a healthy way. Everybody will have pain. And sometimes it starts being seen right from childhood itself. Now, where does a person gravitate? That now generally children don't grow up blaming nature or blaming God. That may come later. But it generally either we beat others, we blame others, or we blame ourselves. And quite often, we may say nowadays people are very proud and they have a lot of ego. Actually, that ego is often a mask for their insecurity. That the people who actually don't have much respect for themselves are the people who get most agitated when others don't respect them. So, if my sense of self-worth is coming only from others, and then that goes off, what do I do at that time? So, now these three broad kinds of suffering that are there in life. Now, kinds of suffering means how we are finding a cause for suffering. So let's look at Duryodhana right now. We'll come to Arjuna a little later, then we'll come back to this particular verse. So now what happens to Duryodhana? He is born in a royal family. Generally in the past, now also, but in the past it was much more, that continuing one's lineage was considered very, very important. And especially for kings, the successors would generally be with their children. So, if there's a king, the king would have an heir. Has any of you heard this word heir? Heir is, what does it mean? Successor. Okay, I told that. But you know, what if something happens to the heir? So, therefore, along with the heir, they would have a spare. So now, the spare would be the very peculiar position. No sibling will want their brother to die. Generally, they wouldn't. But if their sibling doesn't die, they are never going to become the king. So the spare is a very peculiar position. So in Britain, there is still some semblance of royalty. But there was one prince who was the spare. So he has written the whole book called The Spare about his plight in life. That is not a plight. From most people's perspective, it was a very comfortable, luxurious life. But the point is that when Duryodhana was born, at that time, now Pandu was in the forest, and whether Pandu would come back or not, it was uncertain. And Pandu had chosen to retire, and he was the heir. He was expected to be the heir. He was the young boy who was there in the kingdom. And he was not just the eldest among the Kauravas, he was also the strongest among them. And they all respected him. Now, whether they respected out of love or out of fear, that's a different thing. But they respected him. So he was the heir. And then the Pandavas came back. The Pandavas had their own tragedy. Their father had passed away because of which they came back. But then what happened was, when the Pandavas came back, now there's Duryodhana and there was Yudhishthir. Now generally, there's not much mention of Duryodhana having any envy toward Arjuna in particular. So what happens is, initially his envy was towards whom? Bhima. Actually, see, if I am a good speaker and somebody else is a good singer, hey, no, okay, you're a good singer, you may be more popular than me also, but I don't feel that as a threat. But if I am a good speaker and somebody turns out to be a better speaker than me, then what happens is, it just becomes unbearable. So what happened for Duryodhana, he was the heir, and then Yudhishthir came, and now Bhima was actually stronger than him. And while Bhima was stronger than him, Yudhishthir was wiser than him. Now he didn't really care for this wisdom, but that wisdom came out as politeness, courtesy, and because Duryodhana had grown up in royalty, there was a certain level of entitlement within him. Some kids who just grow up in a lot of comfort and are pampered, they feel, I have a right to all this. And so he felt entitled. On the other hand, the Pandavas had grown in the forest. And because they had grown in the forest, they didn't have servants. So they had to do things themselves. They were surrounded by sages, and their parents taught them to respect the sages. So there was no one below them over whom they could lord, and there were people above whom they had to respect. So what happened was they developed a culture of respect and politeness and service attitude. The Duryodhana, because he was born a prince, could order around people. So now naturally, if a new kid comes in a family, everybody's attention goes to that new kid. And if that new kid is much sweeter and more well-behaved than the previous kid, then what happens? It's naturally the attention not only goes there, but stays there after that. And then, so Yudhishthir and the Pandavas in general, and Bhima in particular, okay, they may be smarter, he may be wiser, he may be more polite. Duryodhana was not a person who really cared for politeness much. But it was in his own game. The Bhima was so powerful that when they would wrestle, Bhima would just pick up Duryodhana and throw him away. Now, they would do it in water, so there was no harm. But still, nobody had dared to do this to Duryodhana before. So now, at this level, his insecurity is understandable fully. So what happened was Duryodhana was the heir and suddenly wondered whether he had become the spare. So, at one level, if you look at Duryodhana's pride, his insecurity is very much understandable. Now there are two different things over here. See, okay. Just stuck here. Okay. So our insecurity at one level is understandable, but from insecurity what happens? See, from the insecurity, he went straight towards envy. And from envy, he went towards malice. Malice means he wanted to hurt. See, we all get angry at times. We all feel hurt. We all feel irritated with others. Now, these are all just facts of life. They will happen. But when these happen, how do we deal with them? Just give me a minute. I have to figure out how to deal with this. No, it's not scrolling.
So the right side there is a scroll bar as well.
Okay, that's an interesting observation. So,
I think it's hum.
it has left me to hang also now. Okay, let's see. So anyway, so we all get angry at times. But then, what do we do when we get angry? That is so important. So, some people may raise their voice. Some people may raise their fists. Some people may raise their knives. Some people may raise their guns. Some people may raise their nuclear weapons, if they have them. So what happens is that a person's character, is often known by their boundaries. Boundaries means that no matter how much I am provoked, this is something I will never do. See, everybody has boundaries. Even people who may not be spiritually oriented, they may be living you could say normal, more or less materialistic. But even there is a sense of boundaries. And if you have a workplace, office politics was normally there. You may speak something about this person like that. May try to put a good word for ourselves, put a bad word about themselves, try to form groups, and one can raise oneself up. So that is there. Not a healthy part of life, but that's just a part of life, unfortunately. But even people who do office politics, they will have their boundaries. I may spread some rumor about you. I speak some bad words about you. I'm not going to speak some bad words about your family. I'm not going to speak some bad words about your daughter. No, that is outrageous. So there is a sense of boundaries that everybody has. And the boundaries that a person crosses when they are provoked, that shows their character. So like anger is something we all have in life. But as I said, for some people, anger might be, they'll just give the other person silent treatment. They'll not talk at all with the other person. Sometimes kids may say, Katti. No, I'll not I won't talk with you at all. That's one way. Now, one boundary might be, we might yell at someone. Now, another boundary might be that we might use some foul words. Another boundary might be, somebody might use some fists. Now, another boundary might be, nowadays you could badmouth them on social media, you can gossip about them, you can spread rumors about them. And sometimes that might be more harmful or less harmful, it depends on fists. But like, we all have a certain sense of boundaries. And see, Duryodhana's insecurity is fully understandable. But from that insecurity, what does he do? See, he's just a kid. Nowadays, not nowadays, it's always been there, but nowadays it's been a little more prominent. There are often leftist kind of people who try to puncture the mainstream narrative and show how the hierarchy is not always good. And it's true, hierarchy is not always good. But what they say is, actually Duryodhana is not such a bad person. Actually, it's a Shakuni who made him bad. Well, see, when Bhima was poisoned, Shakuni was not really involved much. It was not that Duryodhana was good and Shakuni made him bad. Duryodhana was bad and Shakuni made him worse. So he came up with a whole plan to poison Bhima on his own. And it was not just the attempt to poison Bhima. Was that anger or was that hatred? Yeah, it's not that we invite somebody at our home and that person speaks an insulting word to us and then they go to a restroom and we see, we are so angry with them and then we see, there's a rat poison over there. We go and put the rat poison in their food. No, that's a crazy thing. Don't get the ideas. But my point is, that could be called impulsive. But here, it's very calculative. That he prepared a feast for all the Pandavas and he said, Bhima, there have been some hard feelings between us. I prepared a special feast for you. And I'll feed you. And he appeared to be making amends. He appeared to be coming closer, but he was poisoning. So this is deadly. So here, going back to our point, what is happening is, so now the fact that he was born slightly older than Yudhishthir, slightly later than Yudhishthir, because of Yudhishthir was the bigger brother. The fact that he was born to a blind father. Now all these are just unfortunate facts of nature. Duryodhana had a blind father and Yudhishthir had no father. Now, life is tough for everyone. Which is better, to have a blind father or to have no father? Well, if the blind father like Dhritarashtra, then maybe no father is better. But the point is, it was not that it was he alone was wronged by nature. Certainly, you could say that he was born in a royal family and because his father was not the king, his claim to the kingship was not uncontested. And that's true. But the thing is, he was not able to process suffering. And the way he processed his suffering, his loss, like say one way is, if I lose, I am the loser. I am a loser. The other way is, I lose something, you are to blame for it. And you are to blame for it. And when that starts happening regularly, then it becomes a very big problem. So, how we process suffering is a very important a skill that we all need to learn. So, and for that, to some extent, it's important to observe. What do I do? So, how do I make sense of suffering in my life? Now, Duryodhana is an extreme example of somebody just wanting to kill someone. But if you see, the psychology over there at one level is understandable. He feels insecure, but from there, the way he degenerated was demoniac, was deadly. So now, what are we discussing over here? That the nature of nature, what is the nature of people, nature of myself, nature of the world, you could go to nature of God, all of that when we want to understand. So there are certain habitual tendencies we have, we need to observe it. And what happens with habitual tendencies is that that's where we start thinking without realizing what we are thinking. The nature of a habit or a conditioning is that we start fixating on something without noticing that we are fixating on that thing. And that's how we start blaming someone. And it could be blaming ourselves also. Now, can we have caused the problem? It's possible. Can others have caused the problem? That's also possible. Can nature be the cause of the problem? That's also possible. So, what do we hold responsible? Now, among all these, when we are facing such suffering, generally where we fixate will determine our attitude towards God. Now, where does God come into this picture? Say that God is above all this. A few people may blame God also, but generally that's not a very sustainable way to live. If God were against us, if God is to blame for our suffering, then why are we even living? If some state had a complete dictator, and the dictator knew that we are against that person, then the dictator would completely destroy that person in no time. So, if they're not doing that, our very existence to some extent is the proof that God is not against us. So generally, see what happens with respect to our life, we often look for gifts in life. Gifts in life means, did I get a good job? Did I get married to a good person? Or did this thing happen well in my life? When we are going through life, we look for gifts in life. And when they come, we feel, God is so kind. God is so merciful. We thank God. And it's important, no doubt, to do that. But more fundamentally, there is the gift of life. There are gifts in life, and there is the gift of life. Life itself is a gift. And probably all of us, whatever our age is, we might know someone who didn't live up to our age. So I grew up in a particular school. I'm reconnecting with my school friends. And we were a batch about 30 students who were quite bright in our school. And I was quite, I could say, appalled to know that almost 9 of them have passed away. And none of them had many major health issues. Probably I had more health issues with the polio and other things than anybody else. So the thing is that just to be alive is a gift. So some of us may blame God, but generally, why would we even be alive? There's so many things which can go wrong at any moment. So generally we won't blame God. So then, okay, if God is not to blame, then is nature to blame? Or is people to blame? Is I am to blame? Now, but then, okay, what is God doing in all this? If I'm going through suffering, will God help me deal with suffering? That's the questions. Can we go to the next paragraph? So, who would like to read? Any of the Matajis? Do we have the mic behind? Second paragraph, if you do know.
Hare Krishna. If you do know my suffering, then why do you not step forward to stop it? If instead of stepping forward to help me, I came to know that in those moments you were smiling while I was suffering. O Lord, why would I be able to maintain my devotion to you?
Yes. Imagine that suppose we go to a therapist, we are crying, and a therapist is smiling. We say, you probably need some therapy now. We will feel like beating up the person, they'll need physical therapy after that, it's not emotional therapy. What kind of person would smile when somebody is suffering? So sometimes when we are going through suffering, one aspect is processing our suffering. But when we are processing suffering, especially if you are of a devotional bent of mind or we are trying to practice bhakti, we think, where is God in my suffering? Is God not aware of my suffering? Is God doing something about my suffering? That question comes up. So that's what we will move towards as well when processing suffering. Next paragraph, would you like to read? Oh wow. Go ahead, please.
Remember, O Lord, that you were never smiling because I'm suffering. It is through my suffering that I'm becoming more open to your calling. You know my pain, you feel my pain, and you want to heal my pain. Indeed, you stand ready and eager to free me from all the pain.
Yes. So you know my pain, you feel my pain, and you are eager to, you want to heal my pain. So actually for us, when whatever suffering we are going through, sometimes we may say that it's because of my own past karma. Now that at a philosophical level is something which is to be considered. But then we may say that it's, and we practice bhakti, Krishna removes our past karma. But then the problem with this is that we don't know how much the past karma was and we don't know how much past karma is removed. It's like suppose, we got a debt from our ancestors or from our family, whatever. And the debtor didn't tell us how much debt it was. They told how much debt I have removed. I felt, okay, still I have to pay 10 lakhs, I have to pay 1 crore, I have to pay 5 crores. It's a huge debt to pay. How am I going to do that? So that part we don't know. So rather than worrying too much about what my past karma is and how much past karma Krishna is going to remove, all that, focusing on that only makes us feel either fearful, okay, how much karma I have, I don't know. Or it makes us feel doubtful, why is Krishna not removing it? We'll focus on how Krishna actually helps us. One of the ways in which Krishna helps us is by helping us to process our pain in a way that is constructive. So processing pain is very, very important. So when there is pain, there are two ways it can go. Pain can either be transmitted. Transmitted means what? As they say, hurt people. Like I am in pain and I do things which cause others pain. Pain can be transmitted or pain can be transformed. Now, transmitted means that, say, somebody starts becoming very hateful. Then maybe one person may have hurt them in their life and they start hating that person throughout their life. They start hating everyone connected with that person. They start hating the entire community. Just this transmit pain. So, what is important is that we learn to transform pain. And now with respect to transforming pain, how do we go about this? I'll make 2 points and then we'll open for question answers. In the Mahabharata, Yudhishthir repeatedly gets this question, especially when he's in exile. On one side, while his brothers are respectful to him, his family is respectful, but still, he says, what possessed me? Why did I gamble like this? It's one thing to have bad things happen to us. It's another thing that we ourselves do something bad. And it's one thing to do something bad, but it's another thing to do something bad in the very area we are supposed to be good at. Isn't it? It's like, say, if somebody is very good in surgery and they invest some money somewhere and they lose a lot of money, but they're not really good at handling money. They'll feel bad. But what if somebody is good in surgery and in surgery itself they make a terrible mistake? Then what happens is, it's not just the mistake, it's that the very essence of my identity, what I thought I was good at, there itself I made a mess. It can be very, very damaging. Now Yudhishthira has his reasons. Yudhishthira, he basically thinks that, he already sees that between the Pandavas and the Kauravas, bitterness is increasing. He doesn't want a war to happen. Vyasadeva tells him that after the Rajasuya Yagya is completed, that he prays to Vyasadeva, please bless me so that I can rule over the citizens and have a peaceful and flourishing kingdom for everyone. And he says, O king, in the future I see the dark clouds of a great war. And after that great war, then you will have a peaceful and flourishing kingdom. So Yudhishthira starts thinking that maybe I don't want a war. I'll try my best to avoid it. So what he does is, he decides to bend backwards. So he thinks that when do wars occur? It's generally when conflicts are unresolved. So basically, wars are the final result. They come from conflicts. But not all conflicts lead to war. It's only when conflicts are unresolved. And why are conflicts unresolved? That's because authority is rejected. Some authority who would resolve the conflict, their verdict is not accepted. Say, traditionally it was like that. In a family, if there was some dispute, they would go to some elder. Or in a village, they would go to some village head or some elder. And whatever that person would say, everybody would accept. But that is not accepted. Then what happens? And the conflicts escalate. So he thinks that, I will always accept the authority of my elders. I'll always obey my elders. Now, he knows, see, to some extent, the tendency to see good in others is good. But the tendency to see good in others should make us kind, not make us blind. Isn't it? So we should need to kindness, not blindness. So now whether Dhritarashtra was involved in the schemes against them, against the poisoning of Bhima, he didn't know. Now sending them to Varanavarth, probably, it's a big thing to send the Pandavas away. It like, say, if a minister who is very popular is sent on a foreign mission. And there's no need actually. Suddenly that foreign mission is sent on a foreign mission, and there the minister gets assassinated. Then does the Prime Minister know about it? Did all this happen without the Prime Minister's knowledge? So there's some suspicion. Now Dhritarashtra had clearly been partial to them in the division of the kingdom. But the Pandavas had made the best out of it. They had taken a forest and they had made it into a flourishing kingdom. But till this time, Dhritarashtra, how bad a person was not seen. So Yudhishthira decided, I'll always listen to my elders. And elders in this case means Dhritarashtra. So when Dhritarashtra called him for a gambling match, he could not refuse. And then he was hoping that Dhritarashtra would stop the gambling match when it was unfair. That when he was asked to play against Shakuni. But it just went on and on and on. And he was a dharmic person, so he thought that I am not using this wealth for any selfish purposes. I am using this wealth for a dharmic purpose. I want to serve the Brahmanas, I want to serve society, I want to take care of my citizens, I want to take care of my family. So he was losing and he was thinking that surely once luck will be on my side. Fate won't be so cruel to me that it will take everything away from me. He was, according to the Bhakti literature or Bhakti reading of the Mahabharata, said that he was actually thinking of Krishna, and he's thinking that, Krishna it's Krishna who helped us build this kingdom. We won't lose this kingdom. It is Krishna. Krishna loves Arjuna. If I take Arjuna, surely Arjuna will not be lost. Krishna cares for Draupadi. Surely Draupadi will not be lost. So here, what happens is that there are two mistakes in this calculation. Now, of course, Yudhishthira is a pure devotee, and whatever happens is the Leela of the Lord. That's one level of analyzing it. But from the level of ethical level where we want to learn something, at our level, we can analyze what was the wrongness in his calculation. That I gave this class once in India, and then after that, one boy came to me, young boy, 12, 13 years old. He said, I learned a very important lesson today. I said, yeah, what is the lesson? He says, obeying our elders is very dangerous. Now, assuming that our elders are like Dhritarashtra is even more dangerous, isn't it? They're not like that. That's not the key lesson over here. But the point is that there are two things. One was that in life there is good intention. Good intention is not a substitute for good intelligence. The two are very different things. And life is tough. Life can be cruel. And good intentions are good. But we need good intelligence. We need to make proper judgments. So, suppose we have got a heart attack, or say somebody in our family has got a heart attack. And there are two doctors. One is a devotee and the other is not a devotee, who can do the heart surgery is required. So which doctor would we go to? Sorry? Who is the most expert, isn't it? The devotee doctor tells us, while doing the surgery, I promise you I will chant Hare Krishna. Okay, will you do the surgery properly? He says, that I can't guarantee. I'll guarantee I'll chant Hare Krishna. Then we may say, now if we have to do that surgery, say, yeah, I want to go back to Krishna, but not so soon. So the point here is that the material world is a brutal place. And good intentions alone are not good enough. Good intentions are very important, but they are not a substitute for good intelligence. So Yudhishthira has good intentions, but they are not a substitute for good intelligence. So he's just not good in gambling and expecting luck to work. It's very, very unlikely for luck to work like that. It's a completely rigged match. It's like, say, a completely a street boxer is facing a world champion boxer. The idea of you might be lucky and hit one blow, and that one blow will be a knockout. It's so low the probability that the probability should be knocked out. It's not going to happen. And the other thing was for him, in this case, his own goodness. He was such a good person that different people need different kinds of education. Like some people, they are naturally very kind and caring, and those people need to be told, you have to be careful. You cannot just trust people. It's good to be caring, but in the name of caring, people can exploit you. Now, some people are so careful as to be suspicious. You tell them, relax. It's not that everyone in the world is out there to get you. Unless you are the sole heir of some billionaire or something like that, you're not so important that everybody wants to get you. So each of us has our way that we need to learn. So goodness, as I said, our goodness should make us kind, not blind. So to some extent, that's what unfortunately happened. Now why am I going in this direction here is, that Yudhishthira found it very, very difficult. When in the forest, how do I process it? What exactly happened? How did I do something like this? And he is the person who is known as Dharmaraj. He is supposed to be very good at dharma, and he is the person who does something so terrible. But again, what happens is that something terrible happens to him, but how does he process the suffering? The way Yudhishthira processes suffering and the way Duryodhana processes suffering. Now, Duryodhana's suffering, he becomes hateful. He is out to kill others. Kill by any means possible. Yudhishthira lives to the 13 years. He tolerates it. And then after that also is ready to settle for a very peaceful solution. But when that does not work, when the same assembly where Draupadi has first been humiliated, then in that same assembly, Krishna is humiliated. Then the Pandavas said, enough is enough now. Now, of course, neither attempts to humiliate fully succeed. There's miraculous intervention of Krishna on both sides. First is as the endless robe, and the second is as the endless form. Both ways the attempt is thwarted. But still the attempt itself is humiliating. Say if somebody is the CEO of a big company, and in their company the police come to arrest them. Now at that moment maybe they call the attorney, and the attorney comes in and the attorney posts bail or whatever, and they're not arrested. But just the attempt that somebody comes to your office in front of all your employees and attempts to arrest you at that place, that itself is humiliating. The Pandavas have to decide, enough is enough now. So what do we do at that time? So in general, what happens for all of us is that, this is the last point I'll make, I'll conclude this. Now, when we are trying to process suffering, so how does bhakti help us to process suffering? That's what we are trying to discuss over here. So, how Krishna helps us to process suffering. So on one side there is a cause of suffering, and we have got the right cause of the suffering. The other side is that we have got the wrong cause of the suffering. Similarly, we have found a cure for the suffering. Now the cure can be the right cure, or the cure can be the wrong cure. Now what does it mean? Like for Duryodhana, he considered the Pandavas the cause of his suffering. Because of the Pandavas, I am not getting the kingdom. So Duryodhana would fall in which quadrant? Wrong cause and wrong cause and wrong cure. Yes. So if you look at these as 4 quadrants, so we find a wrong cause for the suffering, and naturally from the wrong cause we'll go to the wrong cure. So this is, we could say, probably the worst. And this is where Duryodhana was. Now, it's like somebody is sick and the disease is diagnosed wrong. The wrong treatment is given. And then it can be very problematic. I know one devotee friend, he had some eye problems, and he was diagnosed with having eye cancer. And he went through quite painful bouts of chemotherapy. And after 2 bouts of chemotherapy, there was no decrease in the problem in the eye. And the doctor said, actually, I think this is not cancer at all. And now it's like there's so much pain he had to go through. And now other forms of cancer, it seems, are relatively easy to diagnose. Eye cancer is actually, it is very easy to, they say maybe this is something else, this is some other infectious growth or whatever. You say, with other parts, you can take a part of the body out, but eye, you cannot take a part of the eye out so easily to try to process. But anyway, it can be horrible. That if the wrong cause is there and then the wrong cure is there. So now, is it possible that we find the right cause and the wrong cure? Now, what does it mean that, say, if somebody has got the right cause. What is the cause of suffering? The cause of suffering is that I made a mistake. So sometimes we make a mess in our life. We can all probably think of situations where that the problems in our life have come because of our own actions. But as we find the right cause, but then we start beating ourselves up. I'm a fool. I'm a terrible person. I am a loser. So there, the cause is right. Okay, I made a mistake. I have this tendency to think in this way. But from there, it can become far worse. The cause may be right. So the cause can be sometimes, other person might be the cause of our suffering. But from that other as the cause, the cure is destroy the other person. Then sometimes, now in movies, vengeance looks very good. You take revenge against someone. But the problem with that is that after you take revenge, it's not the problems go away. And once one has got into that revengeful mentality, then every time there's a problem, we have to find someone to blame against the problem, blame for the problem. And then maybe at one time somebody treated us very badly and they needed to be punished. But if that's what continues on, then what happens is, all smaller wrongs that might be done against us also, we must think that they're very big wrongs. And then that tendency develops. Similarly, it could be against the self. No, I am the problem. But from there, if we start beating ourselves down, and that can be a huge problem. Beating ourselves means, I'm a terrible person. I will make a mess of my life. I'll have nothing good. I'll never be able to do anything good. Now we may not speak like this, and if somebody else speaks like this, we'll get very angry. But internally there's a mental chatter that is going on all the time. Now, so the problem here is that, yes, we made a mistake at a particular time. But from that, every problem that comes in our life, we start blaming ourselves. It's possible that somebody treated us badly, but from there, we start blaming that person for everything in our life. That's the problem. Now, what about if there's the right cure but the wrong cause? Is that good? Now, sometimes it happens that the doctor diagnoses wrong, but the medicine turns out to be right. Sometimes from those who are from non-medical background, that diseases are not always so easy to diagnose. So sometimes some disease like arthritis or something like this disease is like a broad diagnosis, and then you give some treatment to it. So sometimes the cause may be wrong, but the cure may be right. So now, will that work? Well, the cure is right in the sense that it works. But the problem over there is that what if that problem recurs? So it's like here we will be lucky, but don't count on it. Isn't it? So if that problem is a recurring problem, we can't assume that each time the cure will be right. So sometimes when we are facing some problem, and this is where the right cure ultimately is practicing Krishna Bhakti, is practicing spirituality. Why? I'll come to that. And the right cause and the right cure. So what does this mean over here? See, when we are in the material world, we have to function in the material world. And we have to address problems at the level that they are at. So did the Pandavas, it's significant, the Pandavas had to fight against the Kauravas. It was a fierce, it was often a terrible fight. But did they become filled with bitterness after that? How do we know that? Yes, they respected Dhritarashtra. They cared for him. And we say, this was the person who was a terrible person because of all that happened. But he was more like a passive villain. And Duryodhana was an active villain. So without Duryodhana, Dhritarashtra did not really have that attachment that made him blind. So there's not much evidence that before the birth of Duryodhana also, Dhritarashtra had any envy towards his brother Pandu. But after his son was born, no, he did many terrible things. So certainly they were not filled with hate all the time. So sometimes strong action may have to be taken. But if there's the right cause and the right cure, this is where now bhakti works at two levels. Bhakti offers us that the path to the ultimate solution. What does it mean by ultimate? There's a path to the ultimate means that if you understand that we are souls, we are parts of God, and as long as we are disconnected from God, there will be suffering. As we are reconnecting with God, going back to His abode, is the ultimate cure. But along with that, what bhakti also offers us is that it offers us the calmness, the security, the shelter by which we can better process the immediate causes or the intermediate causes, whatever might be the cause. So when we are facing some problem, at that time, we may also have to process, what do I do about this? When Srila Prabhupada was in India and he was trying to share Krishna Bhakti, it was just not working. He had tried for 20, 30, 40 years almost. Not working. And then, now what did Prabhupada do? Prabhupada could have thought of many causes. He could have thought that, maybe I am preaching so much in English, Indians don't know English, maybe I should start speaking in vernacular languages. I should preach in Bengali, maybe I should preach in Hindi. I should improve my Hindi so I can speak in Hindi more. Prabhupada could have thought that, I give more philosophical classes. Let me tell us more stories. And then, see, it was not that India was not religious at that time. Bhagavad Katha and all the same in 1969 were very popular. So, Prabhupada could have thought that. But what did Prabhupada think? That Indians are infatuated by the West. Now it's interesting, when Indians are infatuated by the West, so therefore Prabhupada said, let me go to the West, preach to the Westerners. If they become devotees, then they come back to India, and then Indians will be attracted by it. Now it's interesting over here, Indians say lack of interest in spirituality, in bhakti, especially philosophically guided bhakti, with a strong emphasis sadhana, could say that is Maya. And now Indians' attraction to the white skin, to Westerners, that's also Maya. So what is Prabhupada doing over here? Prabhupada is using one form of Maya to counter another form of Maya. So it is like one illusion is being countered by another illusion. So Bhagavatam says if a thorn has gone in our leg, we need to use another thorn to pull out that thorn. So it is, Prabhupada chose that particular strategy. It don't say, okay, whenever Krishna's plan is there, it will happen. No, sometimes it is we who have to execute Krishna's plan. And then he came to the West. So he had that clarity. So sometimes there's just nothing we can do about the suffering and we may need to accept it. But sometimes when we chant and we pray, what did Srila Prabhupada do? He stayed in Vrindavan. And Vrindavan, while he was writing his books, he was also praying to the Goswamis. He was going to the temples, connecting with Krishna very, very deeply. And that's what enabled him to, okay, this is what I'm meant to do. And that's how he came to America at the age of 70. And then what happened thereafter was history. Although the first year was very tough, but in the next 11 years almost, it's unprecedented amount of success he got. So for all of us, when we are going through suffering, when we learn to process suffering in a more healthy way, that is when we will be actually able to grow in our life. And bhakti enables us to not just transcend suffering, ultimately by going out of the world, but also to make better sense of what is happening in our life. To notice what are the unhealthy ways I am processing my suffering. And how can I process it in a healthier way. And rather than, at different points, there might be different causes and they may need to be addressed appropriately. It's not that the same cause has to be blamed all the time. And it's not that we can immediately assume that I know this is the right thing and this is a solution. So when we pray to Krishna, when we chant Hare Krishna, what it helps us do is it gives us inner clarity. Cheto darpana marjanam. When we get that inner clarity, then it becomes easier to know that Krishna actually is on my side. When Krishna is smiling not smiling because we are suffering. Krishna is smiling is like a patient is very sick. Oh, there's a serious critical surgery. So doctor will not smile at that time. But if the relatives are very anxious, the doctor, to calm them down, will say that, yeah, this is manageable, don't worry. So Krishna's smile doesn't mean that he doesn't care. Krishna's smile means that he is going to handle it. The problem, whatever we have, is not so big that he can't handle it. So Krishna's smile shows his confidence, his competence. And that's how I told this boy when he said that I don't like to come to the temple. He says, only when you see Krishna smiling, that means Krishna has a solution. And if we connect with Krishna, Krishna will guide us toward the solution, whatever that particular solution might be. So I'll summarize what we discussed today. Our broad topic was how to process suffering in our life. We all will go through challenges to sufferings. How do we process it? So I talked about broadly, suffering can have 3 causes. What are they? Natural, social, and then self. So all 3 can be the causes of suffering. And we will tend in particular directions. So whichever particular direction we may tend towards, that will become our habitual tendency. And all problems will blame in that direction itself. So for example, if somebody tends to blame themselves, when loss will be there, they'll start thinking, I am a loser. They will blame themselves for things which they needn't blame themselves. Like a kid starts thinking that I am the cause of my parents' relationship issues or something like that. So that sort of thing. One important skill which we need to learn, we need to train others in, we need to train our children is how to process suffering. And then we discussed the comparative example of Duryodhana and Yudhishthir. Now what was Duryodhana's suffering? Duryodhana's suffering was that he thought he was the heir and suddenly he became the spare. Or maybe he became the spare, we don't know. He thought he might have become the spare. Now that insecurity is understandable. But from that insecurity, what happened was, it was not just envy, it led to a murderous mentality. And that is unacceptable. So our character is known by our boundaries. Now what are the things we will not do no matter how much we are provoked? All of us will get angry at times. Now Yudhishthir, for him, the suffering was that he equated good intention with good intelligence. He thought that because my intention is good, fate will smile on me, things will not be bad, people will not exploit me. But world is not like that. So then, eventually, when he fought, it was not for vengeance. Which you recognize, the Pandavas, the Kauravas are out to destroy us, and we have to deal with them. But he didn't fixate on that. So it was not the war eventually that he fought, it was not for revenge. The war was fought for justice. It was to establish the rule of dharma in the world. And the last part I discussed was, how do we process suffering? So we try to understand the cause, and in the cause we could be right or we could be wrong. In the cure, we could be right or we could be wrong. So Duryodhana was in the place where his cause and cure both were wrong. Now if the cause is right and the cure is wrong, then this is also harmful. So harmful means what happens is, we tend to blame the same thing again and again beyond what is required. Now here, we are lucky. But don't count on that luck. We need to get clearer understanding. And when we practice bhakti, What happens by the practice of bhakti is, both at the ultimate level, we start understanding, and at an immediate level, we start understanding, okay, what should I do? Now, will we always gain clarity? Not necessarily, but at least we'll move towards greater clarity about how to deal with suffering. The key principle is that Krishna is not causing our suffering. Krishna is there for healing our suffering. And if we turn toward Krishna, then He will help us get through whatever suffering we might go through. Now, whatever karma may get us to, Krishna will get us through. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. So let us pray to Krishna that, my dear Lord, please guide me so that I can better understand any unhealthy ways in which I am processing my suffering. And please guide me so that I can take a shelter of you as the ultimate cure for suffering and as the guide to help me better understand the immediate causes and cures for my suffering. So we'll read out this last line, this first line. I can repeat it after me. Let your smiling, amid my suffering, strengthen my faith, not weaken it. So Krishna's smiling shows that He is confident, He is competent, and He will help us go through whatever challenges we might be facing in our life. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Are there any one or two questions?
Yeah, Hare
Yes,
Krishna.
ma'am.
Anyone questions? A couple of questions.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. It was really wonderful class, very grateful, just like any other class of yours. So this question I got from one of the students, like when we go to colleges. This is like, so there is so much amount of randomness and meaninglessness in the universe. I mean, so much cosmic dust and rocks floating around. The universe doesn't seem to be inherently having some meaning. And it is kind of indifferent, so looks to be indifferent. So it's only the humans that we ascribe and assign a purpose to this. So this, yeah, so this is like, these are not the exact words, but I'm trying to convey the idea. And how do we tackle these kind of questions?
Yeah. So this is ultimately a matter of choice for us. So we may say, okay, the universe has no meaning. But then it is science also which is searching for some meaning. Isn't it? We're trying to make sense of life. When Newton saw the apple falling or felt the apple falling, he wanted to make, what made this apple fall? So science is also a search for meaning. Now, all the scientific advancement we have made is by continuing in the search for meaning. Yeah. So, when one framework makes sense, we use it. But when that framework stops making sense, what do? Either we say that the universe does not make any sense, or maybe there's some bigger framework. So, for example, if you consider classical physics, then Newton's theories and Newton's laws of gravitation worked very well. But then as we started studying massive objects moving nearly at the speed of light, gravitation seemed to break down. Or you could have said, is science itself broken down then? No, that's when science came up with the theory of relativity, the special relativity, general relativity. And then while gravity was earlier conceptualized as a force between objects, now Einstein has conceptualized gravity as the curvature of space-time. Because I'm not going to go into technicalities too much, but my point is, in science also, it all the time happens that a framework that we have created for making sense just doesn't work anymore. Then what do? We look for a bigger framework. We don't just give up and say there's no framework at all. So that would be a recipe for pessimism, for hopelessness. So we could say that we humans are trying to construct or impose meaning in a universe that has no meaning. That's one possibility. The other possibility is that the universe is revealing its complexity to us more and more. And therefore, we need to become more and more resourceful in finding meaning over there. So it's interesting, will scientists say, like Stephen Hawking, he dedicated his life to try to find a theory of everything. And finally, toward the end of his life, it's just not working. But you know how you could call it a spin, how he announced it. But it could also be an attitude. He said that I'm happy to announce that humanity's quest for knowledge will never end. Now what does that mean? Because that means we are forever going to be in ignorance. Or we could say that there is so much to know that there will always be more for us to know. So yes, currently physics itself is having an existential crisis. The relativity and quantum physics don't really come together. But we use physics, relativity to make sense in some places. We use quantum physics to make sense in some places, and we keep moving on. So why assume that it is we who are trying to impose meaning on a meaningless universe? Why not consider the other possibility that there is a meaning that we still have to explore? And if we look at the history of science, it is that assumption that has kept science going. And so it's curious, the same scientists who, I won't use generalized scientists, the atheistic scientists who say there's no meaning in the universe, they never tell us to give up the pursuit of science. They only tell us give up the pursuit of philosophy, give up the pursuit of religion. There's no meaning in the universe. But continue studying science. So if the universe is meaningless, why continue studying science also? Isn't it? So nobody lives like that. So ultimately it's a choice. Is it that the universe is an ocean of meaninglessness? It's an ocean, that's the choice we have. There is no meaningless. And within that, somehow, a few islands of meaning have come out. Okay, the whole universe does not make sense, but how objects fall down, that makes sense. People's behavior doesn't make sense, but this particular theory makes sense. This particular theory makes sense. So that is one way, that within that there are small islets of meaning. That's one way we can look at it. The other is that, wow, I cannot make sense of this now. The other could be that it is that there is an ocean of meaning. But within that, we are encountering more and more, as we are expanding, we are encountering the islets of meaninglessness. So, is it possible that there are some things in the universe which we will never understand? Quite possible. Nobody said that when religion doesn't claim that we will become omniscient. So just because we are encountering some things that don't make sense, and what right do we have to assume that nothing will make sense? Or things ultimately will not make sense? So yeah, we are encountering some islets of meaning, and that's ultimately a matter of choice for us. And which choice is what science is choosing? Which choice is positive for our curiosity? Which choice is going to be psychologically more affirming? There's one theistic scientist who said that if religion is a opium, that's what religion is opium of Master Karl Marx had said. If religion is opium, then we all should desire to be addicted to this opium. Because more and more scientific studies are showing that people who are having some religious, spirituality in their lives, they're psychologically healthier, they recover faster from diseases, they have better families, they have overall better well-being. There are of course some extremists. They're a different case. But overall, the effect is positive. So are we going to say that this is just an accident? Or is it that there is some deeper meaning which we have not yet discovered? Okay. Thank you. Yes, there's a question here. You can ask till then. You can ask, I'll repeat.
My question is,
Yeah, I can go there. Yeah, you can speak. You can speak quickly.
my question, you mentioned about when we have faith, we can
Transmit or transform? Oh, go ahead. Oh, go ahead.
we can ask God to give us intelligence to process and grow through this.
Correct.
The other prayer is seeing God as the ultimate shelter.
Correct.
In our service, in our bhakti, usually I am noticing that we fall into the category one, even during chanting also. How can we come to the second stage where we are able to take shelter when we are chanting?
Well, I find this artificial dichotomy, It's not that we take shelter of our intelligence or take shelter of Krishna. Our intelligence is also coming from Krishna. Isn't it? So it is that when Arjuna fought a war, was he taking shelter of Krishna or was he taking shelter of his archery skills? Well, his archery skills were a gift of Krishna and using this Krishna's service. So it's not an artificial dichotomy. The Prabhupada was very open. Prabhupada would chant diligently, he would do his sadhana, but the idea that when he was distributing magazines, a postman told him, Swamiji, people will throw away magazines. Why don't you write books? The Prabhupada was open to that, isn't it? So I think we shouldn't reduce Krishna, that Krishna can come to us only when we take shelter of him. Of course, we need to take shelter of him. But Krishna can speak to us in many languages. Krishna can send signals and guidance through us in many ways. So that's why, rather than thinking that during chanting I should not analyze, if you think that, okay, analyzing is also one way of taking shelter of Krishna, chanting is also one way of taking shelter of Krishna. They're not two separate things, but they are two separate activities. Just like honoring prasad is connecting with Krishna. Doing arti is also connecting with Krishna. But we don't eat prasad while doing arti. They're two different things. So it's not this or that. It is this and that, but there is a time for this and there's time for that. So if during our chanting some great idea comes up, then we may have to decide, Krishna, if this idea is coming from you, please, I want to focus on your holy name. Please help me remember this afterwards. If that is coming from Maya as a distraction, it will go away. Now, if we find that we get really very good ideas, we may plan that, okay, maybe after 4 rounds of chanting, I'll take a break. I might note something down. Not that every 2-3 rounds, 2-3 mantras I chant and I note something down. That would be very distracting. So we don't have to create the artificial dichotomy, but we need to understand both could be ways in which you're connecting with Krishna. But each needs to be done at its own way, in its own way, at its own time. Okay, thank you. Yes, bro, last question. We'll stop with that.
Prabhuji, so just a comment or a thought process I want to validate with you. Looking at like how Duryodhana is acting maliciously all the time, right? And Yudhishthira is bearing and tolerating for so long time. And almost all the Bhagavatam examples are like Prahlad and all sound, just to my normal mind feels slightly extreme that the tolerance of devotees is too high. And
Correct,
even when we look at Trinarapi Sunichi, it talks about like, tolerate more than a blade of grass and tree, right?
Correct.
How do we kind of balance our mindset? Because hearing those extreme examples, when we go through, let's say, abusive situation, how do we kind of manage and balance that? Because that also contradicts and harms us and also impacts our bhakti in the end, right? So it's actually negative, you could say negative impact on our own well-being.
Yeah, so we always need to look at context. That the Bhagavatam is spoken to Parikshit Maharaj, who is about to end his life, or whose life is about to end, not he's about to end his life is about to end. And he's willingly accepting that. In that sense, you can say. But so from that perspective, Shukdev Goswami is telling him stories that will help him to reinforce his decision. Now, if some devotee has got cancer and they tried multiple times to heal themselves and they're not working, finally the doctor also says there's not chance. Okay, then they decide I'm going to go to Vrindavan and take shelter. Then at that time, should we tell them stories about how, this person recovered and this person did this and this person did that? And no, if that is the decision they have made, if you want to support them, then we tell them, yeah, there are so many examples, so many devotees who went to Vrindavan and took shelter. But if you see Parikshit Maharaj's own life, when Kali was persecuting the bull and the cow, Parikshit Maharaj said everything is Krishna's plan. He didn't tell bull, Kali attacking you is also Krishna's plan, accept it. In the Bhagavatam also, there's Prithu Maharaj. When his citizens are in pain, at that time he doesn't say that there's a famine over there. He doesn't say it's all your karma, the nature of the world. In the Bhagavatam also there are stories where we have Shibi and Ranti Dev. They're going to great extremes to help others who are in suffering. So the context is very important. And in general, it also depends on the role that we are playing. See, generally, we often talk about, say, there are spiritual solutions to material problems. Well, there are no spiritual solutions to material problems. There are only material solutions to material problems. There can be a spiritual consciousness that can help us to find the right material solution. It is, say, if somebody is kitchen in charge, somebody is in charge of prasadam, and after a program, people come for prasadam, and there's no prasad over there. And what happened? There's no prasad. And the kitchen in charge says, cooking in charge says, chant Hare Krishna and be happy. That I want to hear on the Vyasasan. I don't want to hear it from the kitchen in charge. Isn't it? So if that's what you want to speak, then don't become the kitchen in charge. See, when there is a practical problem, there has to be a practical solution given. Now, while giving a practical solution, a philosophical perspective may be given. But if only a philosophical perspective is given, after taking the responsibility for bringing about a practical solution, then that is not going to work. Isn't it? If we come for a class of Bhakti Shastri, and there the preacher says, the conclusion of all Shastra is chant Hare Krishna. So let us do collective japa over here. And that's good, but that's not the purpose of a Bhakti Shastri class. Isn't it? Here I come to study. So when we take on a particular role, we need to discharge the responsibility of that role, and we need to be ready to do whatever it takes for that. So whenever there is a problem, if the problem is a material problem, it requires a material solution. Now, a material solution needs to be executed with spiritual consciousness. Like if somebody has a fracture of the hand, they have to go to a doctor. Ayurveda is a branch of medicine where it's a material solution to a material problem. But we could go to a doctor who is very selfish and calculative and sometimes prolongs the disease so that the patient can become a source of money for them. Or there's a doctor who cares for the patient, heals the patient, and through that the doctor and patient develop a relationship. And maybe the doctor is spiritual, the doctor helps the patient to also become spiritual. So there can be spiritual consciousness for a material solution. See, did Arjuna win the Kurukshetra war by the knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita that Krishna gave, or by the knowledge of archery that he had learned from Drona and he had mastered throughout his life? Which was it? It is both. The practical level, it was archery. But we don't just function at the practical level in life. We look for not just the means to do things, we also look for meaning for doing things. So the material solution is the means, and the spiritual consciousness is the meaning. And we need both in life. So Sometimes when there are no means available, then the meaning is what we need to settle with. And sometimes there's no food available. We may say, okay, sometimes these things happen and we can see this opportunity to do some tapasya or whatever. But if you tell me every day you have to do tapasya, then, if the meaning becomes an excuse for not giving the means or not looking for the means, then that is not a valid thing. Okay? Thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Jai Gaur Premanande.
So, dear devotees, let's once again express our deep gratitude to His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhu by loudly chanting Hari Bol! Hari Bol! Hari Bol! I would actually also like to express few more gratitudes. First of all, starting with Achyuta Chaitanya